All right, hello, and welcome to this video, this webinar, all about how to use astrology to improve your parent-child communication, relationship, your whole life. Astrology can just change your whole life. I sincerely believe that what we're going to talk about today, the 5 key placements in your child's birth chart, are foundational knowledge. Like if every single parent on earth had this information, my goodness, would their households be much more harmonious and relationships with their children, everyone would thrive. It's foundational knowledge, and I'm on a mission to get this out to parents everywhere. So that's what we're going to be talking about today is the 5 key placements in your child's astrology chart. Astrology can be pretty overwhelming. There's like so much information, and it's really an ever-growing type of knowledge base. It's really like it's a whole philosophy. But so we're going to start with 5 key foundationals that will really improve your day-to-day life and make your parenting a lot easier and deepen that relationship, because that's really what it's about, right? So how to know if you're in the right place, if you're catching this on the replay. Basically, this is for you if you want to better understand your children. So something that I hear a lot from my clients and I experience myself as well is as a teenager, especially as a child, as a teenager, I felt very misunderstood. Like I didn't fit in, I didn't belong. I was always kind of clashing with my family. And I really felt a sense of wrongness because of that. And I felt like I didn't belong, and I even sometimes wondered like if I was meant to be here on earth type of thing. And it was really hard. And I just wished that my parents had a better understanding of really, who I was. And that's something that my clients tell me all the time, feeling misunderstood, feeling like you don't fit in. And we're on a mission to change that. We want our children to not experience that and not feel like there's something wrong with them or that they're weird or maybe they weren't meant to be here, right? Like those things are heartbreaking. So if you're on a mission to make sure that your children don't feel like that, like you did, then you're in the right place. If you want to feel like you really feel confident in your parenting decisions, especially if they kind of go against the grain, maybe you're homeschooling and the rest of your family does not homeschool and they don't understand, there's lots of judgments and such, you're in the right place, because astrology can help you really feel confident in that and be able to just like brush it off and be like, okay, well, you don't get it, but I know that this is the best thing for my child. And especially because their astrology chart literally tells me that, right? And basically, if you want to set your children up to thrive and to really live their best life and help them overcome some of the adversities that will inevitably happen, then astrology can help you to do that. So that's what we're going to basically be talking about today. And that's how understanding these 5 key placements will help you in your day-to-day parenting. So before we get in really quickly, I want to introduce myself and tell you a little bit of my story if we haven't really officially met like that before. So I'm Annie, obviously. I'm a mom of 2, and my spirituality and astrology journey really started in 2020. So summer of 2020, I was not in a good place. If you all remember the state of the world at that time, I was very stressed out, very concerned about what was going to come into the future. My children were 3 and 5 at the time. And I was like, oh my goodness, what have I done? Like bringing children, into this world, like where are we headed? I was very concerned about it. And so I was looking for answers, meditating a lot, kind of literally praying, like looking for something. And that's kind of when I started coming back into astrology. I've always loved it as a kid. I always thought it was super fascinating. Like I said, I always felt misunderstood and like I didn't fit in. So give me like all the self-assessment quizzes, all the astrology stuff, the Enneagram and the Myers-Briggs, like all the things that could give me answers, right? So I really loved astrology for that. So I kind of came back into it, and I was watching a show on Gaia TV where this astrologer was looking at charts of famous people who had passed, and she was talking about kind of like what was going on in their emotional world at that time and all that. And I thought it was absolutely fascinating. One of the people that she was talking about, they had committed suicide at that like I don't know, recently, a few years before or whatever it was. And basically, because what she was seeing in their astrology chart was that they were coming on the very tail end of a very like dark time period that had lasted many years. And the host was like, whoa, like that's wild. Like, oh my goodness, can you imagine if this person would have known that this hard time in their life was literally coming to an end, right? And I was just mind blown. I was like, oh my goodness, can't imagine like having this type of insights, for myself, for my children. So I reached out to the girl, I booked a family reading for all of us. And it was really awesome. Got so much insights about, my children. And it's so interesting now, 4 years later, to see some of these things coming to fruition and things that she predicted. But so at the end of the reading, she says to me, in the next few months, you're going to meet a spiritual teacher. And this is really going to help you for yourself and like your journey, but it's also going to change the journey of your work. So I was like, okay, cool. Like that's exciting. I'm going to be open to that. And of course, a few weeks later, my friend sends me an invite to a Facebook group all about star seeds, which was just like mind blowing. Again, a lot of the pieces coming together and answers of things that I had been searching for decades. And so this woman on the internet basically had a program about energy healing and how to, do the work that she did. And so I ended up joining her energy training program, and that's the energy healing modality that I've been trained in, that I've been helping clients with for 3 years now. So I've been doing, energy work and ancestral healing and clearing and that type of stuff. And I love it. It's really, work that I just love doing. And so while we were in the training for that modality, we were accessing our past lives and looking at the influence that they have and all that. And in my past lives, I realized that I had been an astrologer before. And I'd done this many lifetimes. So that was like super exciting, super activating. So I was like, okay, hey, like soul body, like let's bring this information back into, my human brain. And then one day I had the download, like the information come together of merging astrology with energy healing and putting them together to kind of make my own modality. And that's really like the rest is history. That's how parenting astrology came to be, because I love using my information and, my knowledge of ancestral healing and ancestral cycles and family karma and all, and combining that with astrology, because astrology is really it's a map to the soul. It's like a map to your karma, to, your family, your relationships, your romantic relationships, all of the things that you're going to be healing and expanding and working on in this lifetime where your soul chose to come here. And so merging the two together was just like, and then parenting astrology was born. So that's a little bit of, how I ended up doing the work that I'm doing. And I really say that all the time, that astrology really is the soul to your map, the map to your soul. And it's the same thing for your children. So basically, what happens is when we incarnate, souls make a plan. They make a choice. They're like, I'm coming to Earth to experience this. This is what I want to grow and learn and expand on. And there's other souls who are in on the plan and how they fit together and work together and all that. And astrology is literally like that map. It's like a system to explain all this and give it, a human kind of language and meaning to something that is very just soul ethereal, right? So it gives us this map to actually understand what our soul had planned. So can you imagine knowing what your children have planned? It's like the ultimate cheat sheet. I laugh when people say that there's no parenting manual, because I'm like, wait a minute, your children actually do have their very own manual. Everything that they want to experience, from, the hardships that they've planned for themselves, to how you two work best together and how you trigger each other, as a mom and as a child, how their siblings fit into it, all of that, because that's really what soul contracts and soul relationships are about, is that we choose to work together to play a specific role in each other's lives to help each other move forward and expand and grow. And so that's what astrology can show us, how all of those pieces come together. So I love family karma. I love looking at it and seeing how, yeah, two of your children might be the exact like opposite of one another, and how that helps each other and can be super frustrating as a parent, but on a soul purpose, like it's just beautiful, right? So without further ado, let's talk about the 5 key placements in your child's birth chart. So first, I'll give you a kind of general overview of how I see an astrology chart and what it shows us. Okay, basically, you have the north nodes. Like I said, it's a map. So I kind of work backwards a little bit in the sense that your north node is your soul purpose. It's like what you chose, but your child chose, every single soul chooses as like that's the thing that they're coming to achieve and to work on. It's like the ultimate, it's like the North Star, like they say, it's like the ultimate destination. And so then what happens is that the soul chooses kind of all these experiences and these skills to make that purpose come true, right? And so those are the planets. That's how I describe the planets. Basically, the planets are like your toolbox, right? The different energy and the tools that you're going to need for that life purpose. And some of them are more challenging, like Saturn and Chiron. And those are the experiences and that's it, the challenges that soul was like, okay, well, if I experience this, it will help propel me onto the path, right? And so it all comes together into how the soul chose this toolbox and these specific life experiences to go ahead into their life purpose. And then all the houses, the house systems, those are basically the areas of your life. They're like the scenes and the environments that will play out the story, basically. So it's kind of like this giant movie with all of the different, tools, the characters and the planets and the houses, all the different scenes that they're going to be playing out in their life path, in their destiny. So the first one is the sun, which you've probably heard of before if you kind of hear about when people talk about astrology and just very like foundational pop astrology is talking about their sun sign. When people say, like I'm an Aries, I'm in Leo, that's referring to the sun sign. And that's based on the specific day that you were born and the season. Like right now, it is June 24th. We're in Cancer season. So all the children being born in this time period will be Cancer suns. And so the sun really shows you, it's like your brightest expression of self. It's something that comes very naturally to you, that is something that you want to embody to obviously achieve your North Node purpose, like I was talking about before. And it comes naturally when you're in your highest expression of self, your most authentic, like away from all that conditioning and people pleasing and all that stuff. It's really embodying that sun essence. And the way to use that information for your parenting to actually empower your children and support them in that is to use those insights to be able to know what comes naturally to them to boost their confidence. And so the like little parenting cheat sheet, which is what I'm going to be telling you about with all these placements, is using that sun archetype and that energy to encourage confidence boosting activities. So to give you an example, my daughter is a Sagittarius sun. So Sagittarius is an energy that is very expansive, that loves learning and exploring, just kind of like wants to know all of the things. And so for my daughter, she loves trying new things. Like she'll want to try the gymnastics and try surfing and try all of these things. And so when I allow her to try things and I encourage her to do that, it's very expansive for her. And so those are things that boost, her confidence. Another thing is she asks a lot of questions. She like wants to know all of the things. Sagittarius is an energy of learning and growing in that way. And so when I answer her questions and give her that space to do that, that's also something that's really good for her. That's really good for her morale and boosts her confidence. And I can see it. I can see it in her eyes. If I'm really like involved in answering her questions and giving her the space for that, she kind of just like lights up when all the pieces come together. Whereas if I'm feeling like rushed or I'm not really feeling it, and I kind of like shut her down, and I'm not into the questions, I definitely can see how she feels a little, deflated. So sun is basically your kid's highest expression of self, and the way to use that in your parenting is to encourage them with confidence boosting activities, which obviously has trickle effects into all of their boosting their confidence is just really good for their health, right, and their mental health. The next placement is the moon. So the moon is one of like my favorite things to look at because it's so insightful and it's so different than the sun and really takes it a layer deeper. So the moon shows us our emotional world. It's really that inner world and how you process your emotions, that inner voice inside your head, everything that has to do with your emotions. And so understanding your child's moon sign is it's like the ultimate key, because you can see how they process their emotions or how they can maybe suppress them and avoid them. So another example, my children both have Aries moons. Aries is an energy that is very explosive and can be a little aggressive. And so before I recognized this, I thought that, like, oh my goodness, I thought that they were like, this is such a problem. I was like, oh God, like people are going to think this is terrible. They get so angry, very explosive, big outbursts. You know, I was definitely scared of judgments, especially in their, when they started going to school. Like this would keep me up at night, because I was like, oh my goodness, like they can't be acting this way, right? Cannot be angry and screaming and yelling. Like these are things that children are supposed to outgrow, right? If you're nurturing them. And so I was really hard on myself and on them, and thinking that there was such a wrongness to this anger. But then I realized, when I learned that they had an Aries moon, I was like, oh my goodness, this makes so much sense. It makes, like, it's like a world of difference for me to understand that this is just their natural expression of their emotions, is they lean to anger. Whereas, you know, some children might be a lot more emotional, like if their moon is in Cancer, it's like a lot softer, they're probably more, you know, crying and things like that. Just completely different energies, right? Whereas I have a Capricorn moon, for example, I'm very much the type to like shove my emotions down and just avoid them and ignore them and put them in a nice little container for later. My children are not like that. They're in the moment, they're going to express it. It's going to be an explosion. So I was able to let go of so much guilt and so much like fear of judgment, putting this pressure on all of us that, you know, no, you can't act this way. Like this is not how we properly process our emotions. And so this gives me so much insight to know that I do need to teach them ways where they won't hurt themselves or others when they're angry. And obviously, you know, when later on in life, like you can't be telling your boss to fuck off because you got mad at them. So it just lays out a very clear map for me to know that they need to learn coping tools. But it lifted so much guilt and so much pressure, and feeling like I was a bad mom, feeling like, my goodness, I must have messed up somewhere along the way, that both of my kids are so explosive like this, right? But no, it's not. I didn't mess up anywhere. It's not on me. It's not a reflection of my parenting. It's just who they are naturally. And if I look at their overall life purpose and, you know, again, their North Node and their destiny, I can understand and see why they might need a little bit of that fire passion, and not letting, like, my children do not let anybody step all over them. Like people pleasing is just, it's not a thing. And in the context of their life purpose, it makes so much sense that they need this fire. They need this, yeah, even in the aggressivity a little bit. So liberating. Understanding the children's moon sign was so liberating. If you honestly, if you take one thing away from this webinar, it's the importance of understanding your child's moon sign, and just start there. You know, if astrology still feels overwhelming for you, you're kind of like, okay, what is the one thing that I want to start at? I would say it's understanding their moon sign, because then it helps you to nurture them and support them how they need, right? So like that's it with my children, when they're in those fits of anger, I'm not going and like giving them hugs or trying to talk to them about it. Like that's just not happening. That's not how they need to feel nurtured. So instead, I'll encourage them, you know, go and like hit in your bed and like this, like punch your pillows. You know, we're thinking of getting like a punching bag. That would be so good for them. Encouraging them to, you know, like kind of scream it out. We, you know, will have these fits of just like, yeah, just letting it out. Basically, they need to let it out. So I'm able to nurture them and show up for them how they need to in that moment, instead of kind of taking an overall standard approach, right? So it's been really, really life-changing for us. And I really want to encourage you as well. If there's one thing, it's have a look at your child's moon sign. So basically the energy that rules their moon. So then the third placement is their rising sign. And so the first three that we've talked about, the sun, the moon, and the rising, are what are referred to as like the big three in astrology. And because they're very like core placements that make up a person's identity. And so the rising sign is the lens through which you see the world, the lens through which your children are seeing the world. And obviously this affects their behaviors, right? And how, because the way that you perceive a situation is, it filters all of your information and all of your beliefs, right? Which then will affect the output that you put into the world, right? And how other people see you and respond to you, and just how you behave is all filtered through that perception lens. And so understanding that basically just it helps you to see that it helps you and it reminds you that not everyone perceives things the same way, and it helps you to avoid misunderstandings, to understand that you're having a completely different perception of things, right? How many like misunderstandings are there in the world because people aren't coming at it from the same lensing and the same way to look at it? And they always say, like, a popular saying is that it's like, there's person A's truth and person B's truth, and then the actual kind of truth. And it's like everyone has their own filter of their life experiences, and very much so a filter of the rising sign energy. So to give you an example, my sun is a Capricorn rising. Capricorn is an energy that is very kind of traditional, very ambitious, kind of hardworking, but in its very essence, it is very traditional. It's yeah, hardworking and traditional is a good way to describe Capricorn. So all of the information, basically my son's like whole like world is through this lens of Capricorn, whereas me and their father are Sagittarius risings. And so we see the world through very much of a wanting to explore it and expand and always grow. Travel, Sagittarius rules travel. So if you don't know, right now we are a traveling family. We left Canada in fall of 2021. We've been living in the Dominican Republic for the last 3 years, and we are going to be going to Southeast Asia in the fall. So we are world schoolers. We basically are expats. We've left, our home country. And so that's super great for us with our Sagittarius risings. But my son right now is having a bit of a hard time with this because he wants what he calls the normal life. He wants us to, we sold our house in Canada and he remembers it. He wants us to have a house again, have a home base. He's like, why can't we have a house and live there and have a normal life, And my goodness, it's like, for me, it's heartbreaking. It's literally just not how I see the world. Other people are like, my goodness, your children are experiencing such beautiful things and seeing the world and all these adventures, and think it's so cool. But my son just does not have that lens at all. He does not have this lens of gratitude for all these experiences that we're giving him, because he has a very traditional kind of view on the world. And that has been a source of extreme frustration for me, just because of all of the emotions and everything that's coming with that. But again, because I know that this is his lens, I know that it's not a wrongness. I'm not sitting here making it a wrongness for him and, telling him that like he's the problem and, we got to get on the same page as everybody else. It's just giving me a better understanding as to why this lifestyle is more challenging for him than it is for the other 3 of us in our family unit. And it makes so much sense that, yeah, my little Capricorn rising wants to settle down in his home and have a normal life. So again, just liberated me of so much like heartache and literally staying up at night of like wondering like why this isn't working as well for him as it is for my daughter, for example. And she's just more different and flexible in other ways. She's her whole chart for that. Our 4th key placement that you want to be looking at is Mercury. And so Mercury is the planet that tells us all about someone's communication style and as well as their learning style. So that's obviously very important for us as parents to know, is how do our children learn best, right? And how do they take in information? It's really yes, like how they process information, and Mercury will also be involved in their decision-making processes. And so understanding this really can answer, what is the best kind of schooling environment for you? And so that's something that I often see when I do family readings. Well, parents will come because their child is having a hard time in school, or maybe maybe their children are younger, they're thinking like, do we homeschool? Do we put them in a traditional school? Is a Montessori school better? A forced school better? Like, what's the best thing for my child? So those are kind of 2 questions that I see often. And that's where we would look at Mercury and to see basically, how does your child learn best? How do they take in the information? What is that lensing? So that then we can have a better environment for them, right? Like, let's say, for example, I had a client who her child was Mercury in Sagittarius, and like I was saying, Sagittarius is all about exploration and very like kind of hands-on learning, like being immersed in, whatever it is. And she was saying how she's considering like a forced school for him. So I was like, that's perfect. Like he would probably do really well. Whereas say someone who has, a Mercury in Capricorn, like I was just telling you about with my son, much more traditional, that child would do better in a traditional school system than someone who had like a Mercury in Sagittarius, for example. And so that's one of the things that, we can look at to really understand how your child will do in terms of schooling, right? Another thing to consider is how they make decisions and how their whole thought processes are. Mercury rules the mind. So it's how you process the information as well. And so let's say, for example, you have Mercury in Cancer. This is not an energy that is very logical. It's not like all in the brain. It's much more intuitive and feeling their emotions. So if my child had Mercury in Cancer, then that would be a signal for me to know that I really need to help them in developing their inner knowing and their confidence in themselves and their gut, right? And their gut feelings, and helping them to recognize how that feels like, in their body and such. Because that's it, they're making their decisions from a point of view of intuition and how it feels for them. So if I were to sit there and try and help my child, thinking like, okay, let's do a pros and cons list, and that's going to help them and help them make decisions, and thinking that this is a good tool for someone who has this Cancer energy, it's really not the same thing, because that's a much more logical, like systemic approach, right? Of balancing pros and cons. It's not an approach that helps them lean into their inner knowing. So that's just like these little like nuances. And that's what's also I love about astrology, is that it helps us to not like see this like one size fits all kind of parenting approach, right? There's so much now, like we're in this generation, especially if you're a millennial like me, like we are in this generation of parents who want to just do things differently, right? And more mindfully. And so you've had conscious parenting kind of coming up, and positive parenting, right? And helping your children like feel seen and validated and all these things. Like we're doing parenting very differently. And I think that that's amazing. But it still can be a little bit of like a one size fits all approach, right? So that's what I love combining, astrology with parenting, is that you can take these conscious tools, and then really kind of tailor them more specifically for your children, how they actually need. All right, so our last one is Venus. And Venus is also very cool, because Venus in your chart, in your child's chart, your own chart as well, but in your child's chart will tell you all about their love language, how they best receive affection. And so that is, again, like the ultimate little cheat code for deeper connections with them. So if you're not familiar with love languages, it's, basically this idea that people receive love and affection differently, and understanding the love language of the different people in your family unit is such a game changer. Like when I first learned about love languages, just for me and my spouse, so many things made sense, and we were able to stop making it a wrongness about the other one. So to give you an example, my love language is acts of services, and my spouse's love language is physical touch and connection that way. And prior to that, there would be a lot of like frustration, because I would sometimes be like, oh my goodness, you're so like needy. You want to be like touching all the time and like cuddling. And again, I'm a Capricorn moon. I am not a cuddler whatsoever. So I would be making it a wrongness on him that he was just like so like emotionally needy. And then he's coming and looking at me through that lens of, emotional connection being like physical and hugging and kissing and all, but mine is acts of services. And so he'd be like, oh, he'd feel like I was like demanding too much, in terms of like household chores and things like that, or, making it a wrongness that I didn't like maybe want to like do the dishes or like whatever, he'd be like, oh, you're acting like a princess and all that. And so when we learned about love languages, we were like, oh, this makes so much sense. And we're able to completely drop those judgments towards one another and see that, no, we just receive affection differently and we have different needs. And so same thing with your kids, when you can understand how they best receive affection, then you can use that to deepen your connections, right? Like for me personally, there's nothing more frustrating than like putting in the effort and making a lot of energy and stuff to connect with my children, and it kind of falls flat. So for example, like let's say we go out and we're doing all these things. We're having like this really fun day. We go to like the water park or whatever it is. And I'm thinking like, this is great. They're loving it. Like they're just, living their best lives, right? And then we come home and they have this like lack of gratitude and they're still being themselves and kids and whatever. And I'm feeling super frustrated. And I'm like, what was that, right? Like I just put in all this time, this energy, this money, and you're still like, it was like, whatever, another day. And for my children, it's because that's not their love language. It's not how they receive. So what I just described, like that would be really good for someone who, if your child, their love language is what's the one, the quality time together, then that would be perfect, right? But for my kids, that's just not how it is. So understanding, their love language helps me to really connect with them how they need, so then eliminate a lot of that frustration, right? Rather than me thinking what they need. And so that's what Venus will show you, and that's how you use it as like the ultimate, cheat sheet. So I want to kind of bring this all together and give you this like really great example from just yesterday. So we're just like at the very beginning of summer break now. My kids have been off school for a week and a half. They're both home. Like I was saying before, that Aries moons, we just have a lot of kind of chaos and explosions sometimes, like I'm doing the dishes and then I turn around and there's a full-on fist fight that's happening. I'm like, what happened? And it's like, oh, well, he looked at me the wrong way, or he was breathing too close to me. And I'm just like, help, send me some help. And so obviously my guides, my inner knowing was like, girl, do your own program, like go look at your own course. So I was like, that's a great idea. I'm going to do that. And so I did. And I kind of pulled up, these cheat sheets that I have that describe all of the placements. And what I discovered is basically, of course, so when these kinds of, more challenging behaviors happen, the way that we're kind of conditioned to respond, I mean, for me anyways, it would be to like, crack down more on like discipline, right? And maybe having like a reward system and all of that. And that was my first, I'm not gonna lie, like that was my first reaction. But then I was like, no, this is not what they need. They need deeper connections, right? Like it's just because when they're bored and when they're feeling like they haven't had enough connection time for me or attention, this is when these things happen, right? When these behaviors kind of act up. And so I was like, okay, how can I deepen the connection and have it like make a big difference very quickly? Because I'm just falling into, an energy of resentment and not loving this. And I don't want that. I want a summer where I'm really like happy and grateful and I'm loving spending more time with them and connecting with them, right? And so I pulled out, like I was saying, I pulled out the cheat sheets on my course. I was looking over at their placements, and it became like really clear for me that I just need to be a lot more silly and playful with them. So my son is a Leo sun. My daughter is a Sagittarius sun. These are both energies that are like very light and playful. Leo literally rules play and creativity. Sagittarius loves that type of energy as well. There's like a lightness. And so I was like, okay, I need to really be a lot more silly with them, play, like joke around, just not like take myself too seriously, which is literally the opposite of what I was saying first, right? My first reaction was just to like get more like strict and have them like on a much more tight routine. And that is just not what my kids need. Some other children like Virgo energy, probably what they need, but not my kids at all. So I was like, okay, I need to bring in a lot more play, a lot more silliness. And so yesterday, I was writing my newsletter. If you got the newsletter this morning, I was talking all about this, but I was writing the newsletter on Sunday, on Saturday. And so Sunday was yesterday. And I was like, okay, I need to just like do this right now, right? And so my kids made a mess. They like knocked something over when they were like roughhousing or whatever. I was like, okay, we need to clean this up. They didn't want to clean it up. And I was getting frustrated. I was like, this has to happen. And then my daughter was like, oh, let's play hide and seek. And whoever you find us first is going to help you to clean up. And at first I was going to be like, no, because I'm really annoyed and you need to clean this up and we'll play hide and seek after, right? To use the hide and seek as the reward, right? Clean this up, we'll play hide and seek. But I was like, no, I'm going to seize this, take this chance, like this opportunity. I was like, great, yeah, let's do this. So I start counting right away. 1, 2, 3, so they go hide. And so I ended up finding my daughter first. She's frustrated about that, but she ended up coming and cleaning. And so I right away seized that opportunity to make things a lot more playful, right? And have that creativity. And creativity is another thing that is like my summer plan. Both my children really thrive when they have opportunities for creativity. So my daughter is a Pisces rising. Pisces is like one of like the energies that is associated with creativity. Very in tune with like, you know, the ethers and channeling and stuff like that. My daughter loves creating art, like just for art, making things like pretty and like flowing and all of that. So I'm definitely going to be implementing a lot more opportunities for creativity, give her that outlet. My son also, with all his Leo energy, he also can really benefit from that creativity. Like I'm saying, Leo rules creativity. So that's really great for him. But my son, with the combination with his Capricorn energy, he's like creative in the sense that there has to be like a purpose for it. So he'll take sticks and kind of build something, you know, like if we're at the beach, he'll have a stick and it'll be sharp and he'll start like sharpening it with a rock. And then he's like, oh, look, I have a fishing spear. You know, he's kind of always making things like that that have a purpose. So creativity is going to be a big focus for us this summer. But again, I have that nuance and understanding that difference in their creative expression, right? Like I was always like, oh, like I would tell my son, like, come and draw and paint with us. And he's just not really into it, you know? And he always says, like, I'm not creative. I'm not creative. And I've been explaining to him, I'm like, you're very creative, but in a different way, in a different lens of more like building things that have a use and a purpose, rather than my daughter, which is just flowing and making things pretty and combining the colors together. So again, that helps me to know and to give them that individual space. And it's also helped me to, help my son overcome this, his conditioned belief that he has that creativity is like art and like that's what's creative. And he was starting to build this inner dialogue and this belief that he's not creative, which is not true at all. He is, just in a very different way. And so all of those nuances are because of astrology and because of learning their charts. And like I said, it's only been one day and I saw such a big difference. Yesterday, my son, we were like just relaxing, like before bedtime and watching TV. He was super cuddly. He was just like on me and like laying there, and he would go away. He would like come back. Very, yeah, just very cuddly, which is a really good indication for me that I know when he's feeling good and like his cup is filled, because yeah, that's it. He otherwise he can be like a little more reserved and pulled back. So when he's cuddly with me like that, I know that's like I'm doing something right. I've like got it on the nail, right? And so it was super cool to see that literally just one day of implementing this, I can already see such a shift and that deeper connection. So I'm excited for our summer. I think it's already like a big shift for us. Okay, Holly, yeah. Okay. You said, what kind of energy does Aries bring? My youngest son has Aries in 4 of these placements and Aquarius in Chiron. Oh, wow. So 4 of these 5 key placements in Aries. That's cool. That is a lot of Aries energy. So Aries energy is the trailblazer. It's the first sign of the zodiac. I'm an Aries as well. My Aries sun and Mercury. And so Aries is an energy of initiation, of starting things. So he's probably like a natural leader. And so he wants to do things on his own. Something with the Aries energy is that they're very good at starting things, but not so good at following through and seeing them. So that's something for you to be aware of, because again, that's somewhere where we can easily fall into judgment, right? And place these projections on like finishing what you start. That's really not Aries energy. Aries is the spark. They're able to start things, have all of that motivation and that energy, gather other people to their cause, and kind of bring people together. And then it's like, okay, great, you go on. And I don't necessarily need to see that through. But sometimes in life, you do need to see things through, you know, like we live in a system in a world where, you know, the matrix, we need to do certain things and get them done. So that is something for you to be aware of, that he probably will need more support to, that's it, follow through on the things that are important. But then really, that's it, be able to recognize if he's doing things just because he should, or if he's actually really into them. Because that's it, if Aries is leaning into that excitement and what sparks for them, then that's where they kind of thrive, you know? So yeah, so definitely like a natural leader in terms of Aries energy. Like I said, can be explosive. Like I was talking about my children, Aries moon. So it's that anger, like Aries is also associated to anger and can have that explosivity, explosive. Yeah, basically being explosive. So that's something to be aware of. They do get over things very quickly. So it's like big anger, but it won't necessarily last. And it's not like necessarily an energy of resentment either. So yeah, so kind of those are the things that are coming through to think of. Okay, you said super helpful. It also helps with your Aries husband. Yeah, that's what's so cool about astrology is you will see so much overlap in your families. And then sometimes direct like opposites, so the opposite of Aries is Libra. And so one person will be like Aries and the other person is Libra, and they're like a direct opposite. So yeah, so I always think it's super cool. That's what I love family astrology and kind of putting the full puzzle together is because yeah, the energies either complement each other, and that's it when they complement each other. So for example, for your son and your husband, leaning into that Aries energy is a way to deepen their connection, right? So to kind of like go into like adventures or like try new things together. That's very much a way that they'll connect with, with their Aries energy. So yeah, so that's what I love, and that leads me nicely into telling you about my astro parenting course, because that's really the whole point of the astro parenting course is we map out your whole family's dynamics and how everyone's energy fits in together. So that's really the ultimate outcome of the course. So basically, this is a 6-module course. It's all self-led, and we go over all of the basics of astrology to understand your child's placements, all of the basics of them, and then start putting the puzzle pieces together of, that's it, who has which energy in their chart and how these two energies are playing together in your family karma and the purpose that you're fulfilling together. So that way that gives you a heads up of like, if something is really triggering and challenging, it's probably meant to be. It's like a soul contract, for your ancestral karma and family and all that. And you can understand it and identify it and see how this can be beneficial to you to really work with it instead of against it. So by doing this course, you're basically going to have a better understanding of these challenging placements and the triggering behaviors so that you could work with them instead of against them. You're going to really feel confident in your parenting decisions, like I was talking about before. If you're someone who parents kind of outside the norm and against the grain, other people kind of question things, then understanding your child's astrology is like the answer to that. So you can feel really solid in your decisions because you know that you're making them specifically for what your child needs. And it gives you a foundational knowledge of astrology. So like I said, all of the basics, I cover them, but that's it. Not only are you going to understand them, so if you've been interested in astrology and you want to know that, that's great. This course is going to give you that. But like I said, it's also going to show you the way that your family kind of all plays together. So one of my clients who just finished it, she's telling me how she understands her husband better. Her husband and her both understand their children better, and they're having so much more harmony in their household. And even her husband is showing up differently for her children because she's been sharing some of this information of, what they actually need. And he's starting to see, and, we operate from such a conditioning of our own childhood and how things were done. And we, might unknowingly repeat these cycles, or maybe knowingly, and we want to change them, but we just don't know how. And that's the beauty of astro parenting, is that it gives you the very specific information to know how and to make these changes and these, this more like conscious way of living. So I'm going to drop the link in the chat, because if you want to join, I'm offering a $50 off discount, so a coupon for anybody who's watching this webinar. So the code is summer24, and basically that will give you $50 off. So instead of $197, it is $147. Like I said, it's a 6-module course. You can either do it how you want, like one a week, take it slow, or if you want to binge it all in one weekend, that's really up to you. But basically, you're going to be able to learn how to read your children's charts, know all of their foundational placements, what their life plan is, how all of these placements fit for them, and how you can use them. And that's something that's really like, that's what I'm most passionate about, is how to use this information. So I give you a lot of really like concrete parenting examples, like I was talking about before. Each placement has like a cheat sheet, like PDF. That's literally what I refer to. It's like, here I am, I'm ripping my hair out, losing my mind with summer. We're only a week and a half in. I went and I pulled out the cheat sheets. I was reading them for my kids. And then I was like, okay, this all makes sense. I applied it, and literally in one day, I can see such a big difference in my children, how they're fighting, and that's it, how they're connecting with me. So I would love to, have you join, and yeah, just discover all of the insights of astro parenting. It's a game changer. Okay, Holly says, how can we get our spouse on board when they don't believe in astrology? I find it all mind-blowing and cool. Yeah, so that's a really great question. So basically, I can relate to this because my spouse was like this as well. At first, when I first got into energy healing, he was like, cool, babe, like, okay, whatever, and he was still very skeptical. And so what I did is I actually was like, I embody the change and I like be the change. So one, I had to drop kind of trying to explain it to him and get him on board. So I wouldn't so much share like the information and like, oh, did you know this? And they have this and that. I really just like, yeah, embodied the information. And so what I mean by that is like, yeah, so for example, with my children with their Aries moon, okay, when I like discovered that they were very like explosive and I was like, I need to change things up. I would tell him, I was like, I'm going to try a different way. And that's going to be to encourage them to let it go and like hit their pillows and like throw their tutus and whatever and kind of like let it out, and he was like, okay, like whatever. And then he saw that that was like really helpful for them and that it's giving them an outlet, And so I think he brought it up a few weeks later and he's like, oh yeah, this has really been helping our son to do it like in this way. And I can see he kind of lets go of things. My son is like, he doesn't let go of things. Oh God. There's a bit of his Capricorn and Leo stubbornness together, but he doesn't let go of things very easily. But implementing this change with actually giving him an outlet to like physically let out the frustration made a big difference. So then when he brought it up and he was like, oh, have you noticed, that our son is like letting go of things more easily? I was like, yeah, I have. And then that's when I was like, I leaned into his astrology and his Aries moon. And so the best way to get our spouses on board with, that's it, anything that's like astrology or spirituality, like energy healing, all of that, it's to really start doing it for yourself and to start doing it with your children. And then when they see the changes, eventually, that's when they'll get on board, right? Because then it's not so much this energy of like, oh, my wife's nagging again, she wants this and that and change this and that, right? Like we also have to give them some grace that they're deconditioning themselves too, right? And they have to change and they have all of their own healing and stuff, right? And if they're not in that world and in that mindset of self-development, then sometimes it can feel like criticism and more of, that's it, that wife nagging criticism, I need to change, I'm not good enough, right? So we need to just like, we drop that. We don't come at all from this energy of teaching them and sharing all the information. We start doing it. We start embodying it. We live it. And then they see those changes and then they'll start kind of wondering and questioning and opening the door for more insights and sharing that, right? And again, just sharing some of your takeaways. I discovered, this about my chart and it makes so much sense of whatever. And so talking about yourself, applying the changes, they start seeing it, and then that opens their eyes. So yeah, like my husband has come so far in the 3 years that I've been doing energy healing. He now like books his own sessions. He does energy healings with some of my peers. And he was not like that at all, but he just saw the changes within me. He saw how much of a different person I've become, how much like more patient I am and kinder, and I don't, react so much on my triggers. And that was all from energy healing, from understanding myself better. And so, yeah, when I was just being the change and embodying that, and then he noticed those positive benefits. And that's when he started being more open-minded because he wanted that for himself as well, right? And I have so much more ease than he does with my children. And so that also was very motivating for him to be like, why do they why do they listen to you more easily or whatever? And it's like, I don't have to necessarily bribe them for things. And that's really because I'm using the power of, astrology for parenting, and I'm connecting with them on a different level. And he's just repeating what he learned in his childhood, right? And that's not what my kids need. So that's my best piece of advice, is really don't wait for them to get on board with you. You start doing it. They will start seeing the positive benefits in your family. It'll trickle down, and then that'll come from a place of curiosity. That's it, rather than a place of like, you need to change this and this isn't working well and all. So I hope that was helpful. You're so welcome. Great. Amazing. So That's a wrap for today's class. So we'd love to see you in Astro Parenting. Like I said, the code is summer24. You will save $50. You have immediate access to the course. Your life is going to change. I want to help you uncover your child's parenting manual, how you all want to work together as a family unit. So yeah, I dropped the link there. That's good. Yeah, and please don't hesitate if you have any other questions or anything. Reach out to me and connect with me on Instagram. My DMs are always open, or you can send me an email, hello@anniebertrand.com. Yeah, wishing you a fabulous day, mamas, and whoever's watching the replay, let me know, shoot me an email, hop into my DMs. Yeah, I will see you in the Astro Parenting course.